Picture this. You're standing in front of your closet on October 31st, pulling out a nun's habit for your Halloween costume. Innocent enough, right? Wrong. In Alabama, that simple act could land you in handcuffs. And that's just the beginning of what you don't know about Halloween. For decades, we've been told Halloween is just harmless fun. Candy, costumes, jack-o'-lanterns glowing on porches. But beneath the surface of America's second biggest commercial holiday lies a web of bizarre laws, ancient superstitions, and corporate secrets worth billions. What if everything you thought you knew about Halloween was wrong? Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on 8 facts about Halloween that will change how you see October 31st forever. Some will shock you. Others will make you question why these traditions even exist. But I guarantee by the end, you'll never look at Halloween the same way again. Are you ready? In 1965, the state of Alabama passed a law that sounds like it came from another century. Section 13A to 14-4 of the Alabama Code makes it a criminal offense to fraudulently pretend to be a minister, priest, rabbi, or any other member of the clergy. This includes wearing their garb in public. Now, you might be thinking this is about preventing fraud or protecting religious institutions. And you'd be partially right. But here's where it gets interesting. This law was actually part of a broader set of anti-mask statutes originally designed to combat the Ku Klux Klan by preventing people from concealing their identities during public gatherings. The irony? A law meant to stop hate groups now technically criminalizes children dressing up as priests and nuns on Halloween. While enforcement is rare and most prosecutors wouldn't waste time on a kid's costume, the law remains on the books. It's a reminder that Halloween exists in a strange legal gray area where century-old statutes collide with modern celebrations. But Alabama isn't alone. Several states have similar anti-impersonation laws that could theoretically be applied to Halloween costumes. The question is, why do these laws still exist? And more importantly, who benefits from keeping them active? Hold that thought, because what we discover next goes back centuries before any American law was ever written. Every October, millions of Americans carve pumpkins without knowing the dark folklore behind this ritual. The jack-o'-lantern doesn't come from a cute harvest tradition. It comes from a story about a man who was too evil for heaven and too clever for hell. According to Irish legend, a miserly drunkard named Stingy Jack invited the devil himself to have a drink. True to his nature, Jack didn't want to pay for the drinks, so he convinced the devil to turn himself into a coin. When the devil obliged, Jack pocketed the coin next to a silver cross, trapping the devil and preventing him from transforming back. Jack eventually freed the devil under one condition. The devil couldn't claim Jack's soul for 10 years. When Jack died, God wouldn't allow someone as wicked as Jack into heaven. But the devil, still bitter about being tricked, kept his word and refused to take Jack's soul into hell either. So Jack was condemned to wander the earth in darkness for eternity. The devil, perhaps out of spite or pity, tossed Jack a burning ember from hell to light his way. Jack carved out a turnip, placed the ember inside, and began his endless wandering. The Irish and Scottish began carving frightening faces into turnips, potatoes, and beets, placing them in windows to ward off Stingy Jack and other malevolent spirits. When Irish immigrants came to America, they discovered pumpkins, native to North America, were far easier to carve than turnips. And just like that, a legend about eternal damnation became a beloved Halloween decoration. But the original turnip lanterns? They're absolutely terrifying. Look them up if you dare. They look nothing like the cheerful pumpkins we know today. What's haunting is this. Every time you carve a pumpkin, you're participating in a ritual designed to keep the damned away from your door. Sleep tight. But if you think that's unsettling, wait until you hear where the phrase, trick or treat, really came from. Close your eyes and imagine Halloween without the phrase, trick or treat. It's almost impossible, isn't it? Those 3 words are so embedded in the holiday that we assume they've always been there. They haven't. The earliest known printed reference to trick or treat appeared in Canada in 1927, in the Blackie Herald in Alberta. But the phrase likely circulated verbally even earlier, possibly as far back as 1923. It was a simple transaction. Children would show up at your door and you had a choice. Give them a treat or they'd play a trick on you. The phrase didn't appear in American print until 1928, and even then, it took years to catch on nationally. It wasn't until after World War II that trick or treat became the standardized Halloween greeting we know today. Why? Because candy companies saw an opportunity. During the 1940s and 1950s, candy manufacturers launched aggressive marketing campaigns positioning their products as the ideal Halloween treat. They convinced parents that giving wrapped, store-bought candy was safer and more convenient than homemade treats. The phrase trick or treat became inseparable from commercial candy, transforming Halloween from a community folk tradition into a corporate gold mine. But here's what they don't tell you. The trick part of trick or treat wasn't always harmless pranks. In some communities during the early 20th century, Halloween mischief escalated into vandalism, property destruction, and even violence. The candy companies didn't just capitalize on Halloween, they domesticated it, turning potential chaos into profitable consumption. Which brings us to a modern city that decided some Halloween traditions had gone too far. Beverly Hills. Wealth, glamour, mansions worth tens of millions of dollars. And one very specific Halloween ban that reveals just how far the wealthy will go to protect their property. In 2004, the Beverly Hills City Council passed an ordinance prohibiting anyone from possessing or using silly string, shaving cream, or aerosol string within city limits on Halloween night. The punishment? Up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. On the surface, this seems absurd. Why would a city criminalize something as innocuous as silly string? The answer is simple: cleanup costs and property damage. When silly string and shaving cream are sprayed on expensive cars, landscaping, and historic buildings, they can cause staining and require costly professional cleaning. But here's the deeper truth. This ban isn't really about property damage. It's about control. It's about ensuring that Halloween in Beverly Hills remains a sanitized, manageable event that doesn't threaten the aesthetic perfection of one of America's wealthiest enclaves. The ban also reveals a class divide in how Halloween is celebrated. In working-class neighborhoods, silly string battles are part of the fun, a harmless way for kids and teenagers to blow off steam. In Beverly Hills, that same behavior is criminalized, treated as a threat to social order. Halloween, it turns out, isn't celebrated equally across America. Your zip code determines what kind of Halloween you're allowed to have. And speaking of Halloween traditions that have been sanitized, let's talk about what trick-or-treating used to be called. Long before children demanded candy with veiled threats, there was guising, short for disguising. Originating in Scotland and Ireland, guising required children to earn their treats through performance. They would dress in costume, knock on doors, and perform songs, poems, jokes, or small skits in exchange for food, fruit, or coins. This wasn't just begging in costume. Guising had rules, expectations, and a sense of communal exchange. You didn't just show up and demand candy. You had to entertain to prove you'd put effort into the evening. It was a transaction based on talent, not entitlement. When Scottish and Irish immigrants brought guising to North America, the tradition evolved. The performances became shorter, less elaborate. Eventually, they disappeared almost entirely, replaced by the simpler, more transactional trick or treat. Why did this happen? Efficiency. As Halloween became commercialized, there was no time for performances. Candy companies wanted children moving quickly from house to house, maximizing the amount of candy distributed in a single evening. Guising, with its emphasis on community interaction and entertainment, slowed down the process. So we traded culture for convenience. We traded talent for transaction. And we lost something in the process, a Halloween that required participation, not just consumption. But if you think the commercialization of Halloween stops with candy, you haven't seen what Americans are spending on their pets. Americans spend over $500 million every year on pet costumes. $500 million on costumes for animals. According to the National Retail Federation, pet costume sales have exploded since 2010, growing into a massive industry that shows no signs of slowing down. The most popular costumes? Pumpkins and hot dogs, followed closely by superheroes, bumblebees, and devils. Now, you might think this is just harmless fun, people dressing up their dogs and cats for Instagram photos, and sure, that's part of it. But this trend reveals something deeper about modern Halloween. It's no longer just a children's holiday. It's a multi-generational, multi-species commercial event designed to extract maximum spending from every possible demographic. Pet costumes are brilliant marketing. They tap into our emotional attachment to our animals while creating entirely new product categories. And once you've normalized spending $50 on a hot dog costume for your Chihuahua, what's next? Pet Halloween parties? Luxury pet trick-or-treat baskets? Premium pet-safe candy? The answer is yes. All of those things now exist. Halloween has become so commercialized that even our pets aren't exempt from consumer pressure. We've created a holiday where every living creature in your household is expected to participate in the spending. And speaking of spending, let's talk about the real money behind Halloween. Every Halloween season, Americans purchase approximately 600 million pounds of candy. 600 million pounds? That translates to roughly $3 billion in candy sales, making Halloween the second highest candy-selling holiday in America, right behind Easter. The top-selling Halloween candies? Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, Snickers, and M&Ms. These aren't accidents. They're the result of decades of psychological research, marketing campaigns, and strategic product placement designed to maximize impulse purchases. But here's what the candy industry doesn't want you to know. Halloween candy sales subsidize the entire confectionery industry for the rest of the year. Without Halloween, several major candy manufacturers would operate at a loss for months. Halloween isn't just important to these companies, it's essential to their survival. This is why you see Halloween candy on shelves in late August, months before the actual holiday. It's why candy companies spend millions on advertising campaigns associating their products with Halloween traditions. They're not just selling candy. They're selling the idea that Halloween cannot exist without their products. And it's working. Halloween spending has increased every year for the past decade, with total Halloween-related spending exceeding $10 billion annually. Candy is just the beginning. Costumes, decorations, party supplies, Halloween has become a full-scale economic juggernaut. But with all this money, all this commercialization, there's one question nobody's asking. What are we really celebrating? Which brings us to our final fact. And this one explains everything. There's a recognized medical phobia for the fear of Halloween. It's called Samhainophobia, named after Samhain, the ancient Celtic festival from which Halloween originated. People with Samhainophobia experience intense anxiety, panic attacks, and irrational fear triggered by Halloween decorations, costumes, or the holiday itself. For some, it's rooted in childhood trauma. For others, it's connected to religious beliefs that view Halloween as satanic or evil. But here's what's fascinating. Samhainophobia exists because Halloween sits at the intersection of multiple anxieties. Fear of death, fear of the supernatural, fear of strangers, fear of masks and disguises, fear of the dark. Halloween activates all of these primal fears simultaneously, wrapping them in a cultural celebration that tells us we're supposed to enjoy being scared. For most people, that cognitive dissonance is thrilling. For others, it's genuinely terrifying. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Halloween endures because it allows us to confront our deepest fears in a controlled environment. Death, evil, darkness. For one night, we dress them up, make them cute, and pretend we're in control. But we're not. We never were. So this are 8 facts about Halloween that reveal a holiday far stranger, darker, and more complex than most of us realize. From Alabama's nun costume ban to the ancient legend of Stingy Jack. From Canadian trick-or-treaters to Beverly Hills silly string criminals. From forgotten guising traditions to half-billion-dollar pet costume industries. From $3 billion candy conspiracies to a phobia named after a 2,000-year-old festival. Halloween isn't what we think it is. It never was. It's a commercialized ritual built on ancient fears, shaped by corporate interests, regulated by bizarre laws, and celebrated differently depending on your wealth and location. It's a night when we pretend to embrace darkness while spending billions to keep it safely at bay. And now you know the truth. The question is, will you ever look at Halloween the same way again?